All right. Welcome to this 19th episode of Warrior Week, the podcast, Parables from the Pit. My guest today is Mr. Russ Perry. Russ, welcome to the show, brother.
Dude, thank you. Excited to be here.
Russ, graduate of Warrior Week 22, and then inside of the game for 3 years, and graduate of Warrior Week 38 recently, certified trainer just this past November. One of only few certified trainer.
That's right. Like I think at this point, only 15 guys.
So here's the deal, bro. Like ever since I got to know you, since Warrior Week 22. Right, ever since I got to know you, Russ has been a pretty good-looking, decent guy. You know what I mean? So, like, Russ has been a good-looking guy, decent guy, fucking beast inside, right? Smashes any fucking physical, mental, business challenge, whatever, right? I've seen you smashing and smashing and smashing and smashing and smashing. So the beast is inside, yeah? Yet on the outside, there's this genuine smile, kind, nice guy, right? So this is the Russ that I've known. Now, Russ evolved ever since 3 years ago. Like, that version, that snapshot of it, it just became 20 or 30 times the man like that you were. Let's say 20 times, right? Because you can say you were 20 times stronger. You almost made 20 times more money than what you used to make. Your relationship is 20 times more solidified. Your connection and your spiritual side is actually feeding your health.
Right.
So, but there's a story behind it, right? Russ wasn't always this guy. And so I want you to just go ahead and paint the picture of who Russ was, the challenges that you faced, and you know, this initial call to come to Warrior Week 22, and then we'll talk about the rest.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think it kind of stems back where I look at why I did the things that I did and, you know, went through the challenges and made the decisions that I did. And a lot of it came really from just my upbringing. I mean, I was raised in a single mother household, had a sister, had just like a ton of women influence all around me, have a big family. But one thing that was prevalent was this scarcity conversation always from when I was a child. My mom was a teacher, and then as well as now, not paid a lot with what teachers do for the amount of energy they put in there. Every conversation we had, whether it was to go to camp or to take a trip or to Christmas time, was always about not having a lot. Like we had to make the decision A or decision B. I remember one Christmas where we got no presents. It was a creative Christmas, as my mom branded it, where we had like a book and little like knick-knacky crafty things that she had collected. So this fueled me into, I would say, college, where I was really fearful of loss and fearful of not having, mainly because I was driven by the commitment inside of me that, hey, whenever I was going to be a dad, whenever I was going to have my own family, I wanted to be able to provide for them. I wasn't going to have to worry about, like, I didn't want to have to worry about money or this or that, or we could go on this, you know, road trip, or you can have a birthday party.
Yeah.
And so life really hit me right in the face when I was 22. I was a senior at Arizona State University, and I got a call from a girl who I had a previous relationship with saying that I was going to be a dad. And I
22.
22. And the baby was coming in 2 months.
Okay.
So it wasn't even like you have
9 months.
Let's figure it out. I was never married, so this was just a brief exchange, if you will, with this girl. And I had plans. I was going to move to Australia, work for an advertising agency with my degree. So that was like the first whoa moment for me. But those commitments of providing and those commitments of doing better than my dad were now being challenged. Like here, okay, Russ, now you said you're committed to those things. Here you are now, 22-year-old. Let's see what you got.
So let's talk about that, right? Let's just go back to that moment. Because it's not to be dismissed. There's probably a 22-year-old right now who's listening to this podcast, who's watching this podcast right now, whatever the fuck you are, and you're connected somehow, and you actually maybe got a news that there's a child on the way in 2 months or in a few months, whatever the case might be. Let's just go to that moment, right, when you receive that message. Like I don't know if I can recall or say that, yeah, I get it, but I used to, like, there was a period of time where, you know, we thought one of my ex-girlfriends was like pregnant, and I went to this period of 2 weeks of unknown. I was dating this Greek girl, and it's already like forbidden to fucking, you know, a Persian guy dating a Greek girl was like forbidden, right? So the dad didn't knew about it, the mom didn't knew about it, the grandfather didn't knew about it, and then once they found out, like the grandfather fucking faked a heart attack. Like I was with this girl for 2 years. And so inside of that 2 years, it's like a 2 years hidden relationship. Like living in Canada, country of fucking freedom, but like almost like you're living in a fucking cave like back in the days.
Right.
If the father finds out he's going to cut your throat kind of thing, right? So, but hey, it was what it was, and it had its purity in it too, right? So inside of that, we found out that, you know, she might have been late or anything like that, right? And so I remember, like, for 7 or 8 days, bro, I was like in this unknown zone. And like, I have never experienced this zone. This total fucking virgin territory. Like, what the fuck am I going to do? On one side, there was this positive side. It's like, fuck, yeah, man. You know, if there's a baby, like, now the dad has no choice but to accept me. Like, yeah, this is the path. On the other side, it's like, dude, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, I can barely put fucking gel in my hair. You know what I mean? So how the fuck I'm going to raise a kid? So anyway, you know, the answer came or whatever. There was nothing in there. It was just like, you know, she was late or whatever. I fucking over panicked. Which I wanted to talk to you about because I want to know how you felt, man, when you got this, like, what was going on?
I remember I was in Tempe, Arizona, and I was like coming home from either work or it was during the daytime, the afternoon, and I got the call, and it was weird because this was not someone I'd talked to in 7 months.
Yeah.
And so I answered, and it's, hey, Russ, it's me, my daughter's mom, and I'm pregnant, and I think you're the dad. And I didn't doubt it. Like, I knew it was true. Like,
Sure.
there wasn't ever a question in my mind. We did do a DNA test just to be doubly sure after Maddox was born. And of course she is my daughter, but like, it was a fucking oh shit. Like, what am I going to do? I had committed, like, at the time, which was so much money for me, like $3,000 whole dollars to go to Australia to get a work visa and work and move there.
All the paperwork,
all of that was set.
Shit.
All that was set, and that was non-refundable. So I was having to walk away from that. Now I was trying to find out. I was graduating in, I would say, I don't know, like 2 months, 3 months also. And so I had to like figure out where I was going to work. I had to figure out like all this stuff. Like, but I was committed to my commitments to myself. So I found an apartment by myself. I was living with a roommate at the time. I found an apartment on my own that I was going to live with. And I just went with it. And my mom was always super supportive.
Yeah, okay.
My family was super supportive. At the time, my dating life was fucked up, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I just did it. It was the challenge that was set up in front of me, and I made it happen. And all the way to you know, the custody issues, which if you're not married, especially in Arizona, the man has no rights. And so I had to go through the legal process of joint custody, which was fine. The mom was totally supportive, but it was this year-long process. I finally got legal custody of Maddox on January 12th, my birthday, 2006.
Wow.
So she was about 7 months old, 8 months old, and I got legal custody. I remember crying in the courtroom. I was by myself. I just did this all on my own, and I finally had those documents now I had legal rights to my daughter. But it was scary, and it was all of my original plans were destroyed, including financially. I lost all this money, and then I had now this huge financial obligation and child support and all these other things that I had to do, getting a job, figuring it out. But I just put my head down and went after it.
So how did you feel? Like, how did you feel? First of all, how did you feel when the news hit you, right?
Yeah.
How did you felt? And also, did you have to sit down? Did you get any guidance? Was there someone that at least guided you? Or, dude, you were like alone in the fucking night and you had to figure the fucking light by yourself?
It was, my feelings were that of, first of just shock and like frustration at myself, because no 22-year-old wants to find out they're going to be a dad randomly. But then it was acceptance. It was just, this is life. This is my path. Now that I'm on, I can't change it. So let's get to work. And for me, it was reading and research and books and just trying to learn about everything from what they cry, how do they sleep, like what does this cough mean, all the family, first year guide to life books, things like that. And, it was just what it was. And it's hard to articulate that. But at the same time, and this kind of leads into the PIC conversations, I only had her half the time. So I had this duality of my life where 1 week I'd be super dad, taking her to the museums, like going on trips and all these things. And then the other half of the time I was 23.
Sure.
And going out and drinking and partying, doing my own thing. And that back and forth lifestyle existed for some time until really, I got engaged and got married.
So the thought of when you got the news, right? When you got the news, the thought of ever like building a life with this other girl or woman, did that ever cross your mind? Like,
no.
Did it cross her mind?
No, we were both on real agreement with that. And in fact, I've always said it's been pretty nice not having any emotional baggage with a prior relationship.
Yes.
We both love Maddox, my daughter, a lot, but it's kind of like a business arrangement where we just, hey, here's the rules, here's what we do. Okay. It's been, thankfully, I've been fortunate because I have friends, I know people who are separated from their other person and there's fighting and all sorts of stuff. But that was a commitment from the beginning. But again,
no, I mean, at that time when you got the news, right? At that time when you got the news, because you got to think about a 22-year-old, right? You're like, okay, I got no guidance, I got some book. This is pretty fucking huge. Like, you get in a mode where you are actually desperate to find a solution. And realistically, one of the solution, at least that would come in my fucking mind, or if you're a 22-year-old listening to this, or your fucking dad that has a 22-year-old that has a situation similar to this, one of the thoughts is like, okay, let's all get together at 22 under the same roof. Let's make this happen.
Respectfully, that was never a thought in my mind.
All right. Okay. All right. But that was also the same thing for her.
Because there was such a weird, we had this 7-month period where we were never, like, we were together for a week and a half.
Yeah.
So there was it was a
it was
college
an event.
Party week or two, and it was an event.
Yeah.
Then there was nothing. So there, like, as far as romantically, not my type, just values, not my type. There was no reason for me
to commit.
Like, for me, it was an arrangement, a civil arrangement where we have a child together and we're just going to work on that for the next 18 years.
And that arrangement was like all the way to that time that you actually got the documents in your hand, dude, was like the work that you put into it, sacrificing Australia and all the logistics. And like, let's be realistic, no fucking 22-year-old wants to deal with any administrative paperwork and shit. I mean, DMV is already enough, right?
Right.
You go to DMV and you want to fucking shoot yourself. And so now, like, you had to go through all that legal papers. So you get that, right? And what happens then? Like, so you go 4 or 5 years back and forth in this night and day. I remember I used to work back in the days in Montreal. I used to work at this place called Future Electronics. It's a pretty big electronic distribution organization. And I used to work as a computer night operator, and we used to work 3 nights and 3 mornings and 3 days off in between. And I did that for fucking year and a half. And I thought it was pretty cool because like I had a different lifestyle, but then I was living like a zombie. Right? Just day and night and switching every 2 weeks. It was crazy. I could never get used to one or another. Like, okay, like what's going on? And it had some impact on my body, and it had some impact on my fatigue level and everything else. What that constant switching, what impact would you have today when you look at it on you?
Absolutely, with my health. Like, I was in the worst physical shape of my life. I was probably in some type of denial too about being a dad when I didn't have Maddox with me. So when it was my off weeks, I was like single bachelor as it gets, going out, partying, taking trips during that time period, because it was always like a week period of time, and really creating the habits of this social drinking lifestyle that I carried into marriage that ended up becoming extremely problematic and destructive. I just thought that's how life was. You just worked and you went out, and it wasn't weird to me because that's how everyone around me was. But I did start to taste what it was like to create my own life when I finally started my own business, which I did because of Maddox. So that was one of the biggest lifestyle commitments I made early on. Was I was actually working at Apple Computer. I had an awesome job, awesome benefits, stock options, free Apple products all the time. But every time I needed to see my daughter, I had to request a day off.
Okay.
And I thought this was fucked up. I was like, I have to ask for permission to see my child. So I started my own business, which I thought, hey, how hard could it be? But that was like, for me, it was choosing to control my own path. Real small at first. I ended up building my own prison over the next 8.5 years with this business, and it almost ruined me because of the mistakes along the way. However, it guided me down the path of entrepreneurship and really having responsibility for creating my own wealth and my own lifestyle.
It's interesting as you look at Maddox, right? She was the gift or the light in your life for you to see the entrepreneur, right? To meet the entrepreneur. And like, you run a very successful business now, run a couple of books. We're going to talk about all that. And like, being an entrepreneur is who you are. It's like the foundation of who you are. And it's crazy when you look back at just this conversation right here, right now, that like this was a child. This gift was brought in by a child.
There would be nothing I have today. You and I sitting here right now, nothing would exist without Maddox and the path that I went on after that.
So there is a reason why I ask you these questions, right? And the reason is to lay the path of facts, and then the feelings, and then the results that comes out of the decisions that we make in our lives. And so if there is a 22-year-old right now listening to this with the same dilemma, or there's a dad that is supporting and guiding a 22-year-old, there is a reason why we go to the amount of details and specifics, because this is real life fucking talk. This is your child. This is your life. This is not some fucking motivational talk here to try to resolve a fucking problem that you have and co-signing your goddamn fucking bullshit today. Like, the reality is there's going to be a decision that needs to be made. But when we look back, right, when we look back 20, 30 years after, whatever, 15 years now, Medic's 15 right now?
She's 12.
12. So 12 years after, when you look back, right, you're like, man, like that was her gift.
Right.
Like, my entire life changed. Because what would life be if I would have just gone to fucking Australia, meet Crocodile Dundee, maybe was even take fucking part of that movie, whatever, and then so what, right? I don't know. I don't know what the script is behind that. But the point is that there's a gift in this process, and we don't always see it because of the changes that occurs in a short amount of time, specifically yours over the fucking phone call. It's like, bro, you're going to be a dad.
Right. And this was an old phone, too, like a Nokia phone. It wasn't even a cool iPhone or anything.
Yeah, like old school. Was it a flip-flop?
No, I think it's just the brick.
Oh,
like the 6000 series with Snake.
Well, dude, listen, at least you didn't get Page, right?
Right. Correct.
So, Beautiful. Okay, we go down. So you live for 12 years, right? So you get married. You carry some of these patterns of drinking and like basically what you knew, right? Talk to me about how that affected your lifestyle, your marriage, everything, and then ultimately when you saw, the message of warrior and then start knocking at the door.
Well, chronologically, my wife came into my life relatively quickly after Maddox was born, about 18 months or so.
Oh, cool.
I met Mika, and that was always a test of whether or not I was into a chick, of whether or not I would like tell her I was a dad too.
Yeah.
Because if I went on a date and it was a weird chick, that'd be the date, and I would never see her again. It's not necessarily the easiest first date conversation.
I'm a dad, right?
Like, hey, what's your name? Like, I'm a dad, by the way.
Yeah.
But for Mika, I met her, and like you've met my wife, like I was like, A, I can't believe I'm on a date with this chick right now. She said yes to go out with me. This is amazing. Way out of my league here. B, if I'm going to live in integrity with this relationship, I need to tell her right away. And so I did, and she was great, and has known her for 10 and a half of the 12 years that Maddox has been around. But Mika and I both came into our relationship really not clear around what a powerful couple marriage would be. We based so much of our time and energy around going out with others and external things. And for me, one of my biggest external things was my business, was this identity as an entrepreneur. And I was always justifying the work and justifying the attention of my team and all of this as I have to do this now so that we can have a great life later. Yeah. I have to travel, every month for years on all these business trips and all these sales meetings and do all this stuff so I can provide for my family. And that scarcity mindset that we talked about at the beginning, that was always driving me. It was like a fear of, well, if I'm not doing something, I'm not out there, I could lose it all. And I have a daughter, and then Mika eventually became pregnant. I had another one on the way.
Sure.
So all of this pressure started to build and build and build, and my business was having these massive roller coasters of up and success, and then like we're in the red, I'm losing money, I'm draining my personal bank accounts. And so I had no mechanisms for stress management aside from either just working more or drinking. And that ended up becoming a huge cycle for me where I would just drink, regularly, sometimes extreme amounts. And Mika accepted it. I don't think she never approved of it, but there was always a forgiveness, if you will, there. The problem and the pit that I went in was when Mika got pregnant. I was now going to be a dad again, but it was obviously much different than the first time.
Yeah.
First time was like phone call. You're going to be dad in 2 months.
Now
Stacy and I met like 3 times before Maddox was born, and then I was a dad. For Mika, I was married. I had a 9+ months of experience,
sure.
And we were not equipped for what that was. And I slowly started to feel isolated. I started to feel like Mika was not the same person I married. Obviously, she's not. She's pregnant, and with the work environment that I was in, there was someone I worked with that I went to seek the attention of another woman and wound up in an affair. Mm-hmm. This got exposed after my second daughter, me and Mika's first daughter, was born, and 2 months after she was born. And it was the worst place I've ever been in my life in 2012. This was me finally being confronted to the point where my whole life was going to crumble with alcohol, with the affair, with everything. And at that point, thank God we had our daughter Reese, my second daughter, first.
Yes.
Because she was the glue that held us together. And I remembered those commitments to myself when I was a kid about being the best dad I could be. And I was just like, who the fuck am I right now? I am not that person at all. And again, by the miracle of God, we made it through it. We found ourselves going to counseling, lots of counseling. We found ourselves going back to church, which was void from our life.
Yeah.
I committed to getting sober, which happened in 2013 in October. Yeah. It's crazy it even took me that long to make that decision. But again, that was another layer. And then we roll all the way up into 2014. Things are getting a little bit better. Close my agency. 2015, I start my business, Design Pickle, the one I have now. And that's when I first discovered Warrior, 2015.
So we're gonna roll back right now.
Yeah.
And you know, about exactly at that time when you decided, that specific time when you decided to actually give yourself permission and to connect with this other woman, right? Whatever, physically or whatever the fuck that was, right? So, and we're gonna pause there, and I'm gonna go back to this idea, that this conversation that I had yesterday on training. Yesterday in the group training that we run here on in the Brotherhood, the Wake Up Warrior Brotherhood, online training that we have monthly. I went on a rant, and I started saying, like, what the fuck? I don't understand. Why would you fucking cheat on your wife? Like, I don't get it. If you don't like the woman you're with, if you don't love her, or if you're not enjoying, if you're miserable, then fucking quit, man. Or just like, why the fuck would you cheat? Cheating is nothing but lying and backstabbing. That's what it is. It's just formatted now in a better word so that it's used now. Sometimes using it positively. Hey, man, I cheat. I can play. I'm a player. I can play this woman. I can play that woman. It's like, bro, you're nothing but a fucking liar and a fucking backstabber, right? So I went on a fucking rant, on a quest to discover and to understand. And I don't arrive at anything but like, okay, fuck you. You're a backstabber. You're a cheater. That's the conclusion that I can make. But I didn't really scientifically arrived at an answer that why do you fucking cheat, right? I asked the question to the guy. He's not able to answer. I don't understand it. The only conclusion I can make is, okay, fuck you. You're a liar. You're a cheater. You put a fucking knife someone's back. So fuck you. Same shit is going to happen to you, right? Which is a pretty tyrant way of making a conclusion. but then check this out. Yesterday at 3 o'clock, like the training finished at 2. At 3 o'clock, I had this doctor appointment. This doctor appointment that Troy actually connected. Troy Hoffman actually made the appointment for me to Dr. Debke, and I go. It's this supposed to be this food and allergy doctor, right? That's what Troy tells me. We go in and I have a 90-minute session with this doctor. Now, Dr. Debke used to run the labs for Dr. Mercola. I don't know if you know Dr. Mercola. Like, dude, like huge in health and in just holistic health, right? Concepts of energy, concepts of food, air, like just fucking like I used to be a fan of Dr. Mercola, and I still am. But when I say I used to be, like I used to like get guidance from Dr. Mercola daily and apply them. And this goes back when I was in oil and gas in Houston. And so I start having a conversation. I swear to God, the time fucking collapsed. 90-minute, actually no, 100-minute, because it was like an hour and 40 minutes. 100-minute passed by, and it felt like it was 30 seconds. I was simply sitting there, and I was just like a sponge, just receiving everything that he was talking about. Because everything he was talking about made sense scientifically, made sense spiritually, and fucking made sense like based on his own philosophy. So I mean, like I'm sitting there, I'm like, how the fuck is this possible that the pieces are like clicking in my brain? And then he asked me a question, right? And it's like, okay, are you stressed? You know, typical question. And I told him, listen, I said, dude, like I can sit here and say, nod my head and say I'm stressed, but reality is, like, this is the truth that I'm telling you. I don't even know what fucking stress means. All I know is what people talk about it, right? When you get stressed, there's hormone release, this and that. Like, it's everything that I've been told. But I fucking don't know what stress is. Like, I know what anger is. Tell me what anger is. Yes, I know what anger is. I know what blaming is. I know what guilt is. I know what shame is. But I don't know what stress. Like, I cannot sit here and tell you yes. Because that's what I've been doing most of my life. Dude, you must be stressed. Yeah, it was a stressful day. What the fuck does that mean? It was a stressful day. I don't get it. Like, I don't fucking get it. So I'm telling him that I can't. Like, people say, oh, if I drink coffee, I can't sleep at night. I drink coffee and I can't even feel anything, right? I drink energy drinks. I can't feel anything. I take this pill. I take anything that I take. It's like I can't feel or I can't see the difference, right? Including with the only thing I could say maybe is if I don't get enough sleep, yeah, that I can feel it, right? Or hunger, or thirst. So then he says something interesting. He starts defining his life, that he saw over thousands of patients in a period of 4 years, and his life was 5:30 in the morning all the way till 8:30 at night, and 5:30 till like 1:30 would see patients over and over, half an hour break for lunch, and then 2 to 8 patients. And that was his life, right? And I started comparing it to mine, kind of like, I have conversations hour after hour with different, and I don't ever feel fatigued or tired, because each conversation, each hour is a new conversation, is a new man, there's a new dialogue, and like I feel fueled by the purpose behind it. So it never feels like, damn it, I have to do this, but I get to do it, right? And then he drops the fucking bomb. I don't know what he called it, the term, but he says, you and I are the type of guy, and there are guys like that, you and I, and then you and Garrett, and you're the type of guys that are like, our signals are shut down, meaning that we don't pick up the signals, right? We are no matter what, like all the laws of physics said, you should be fatigued and you should be fucked up, but you keep going, right? You keep working, you keep doing, and the signals are shut down. So I'm like, oh shit! It was for the first time that I clicked, and so there's a reason why I don't get stressed. It's just not. It is there, but why I don't get it, because the signals are shut down. And he says ultimately the problem with that is that we're gonna find out in a hard way, like boom, one day, whatever, health, anything, right? I'm like, holy balls, right? So then as I was like, I had this moment of aha when like, maybe the signal of the dude that is cheating is shut down. So like there is this feelings and everything that gets accumulated, but yet the signals, right, are shut down. They just shut down, and out of that, boom, something happens.
I mean, absolutely, and not to use this as an excuse, but it's an accelerant. Substance and alcohol mute those signals even further.
Scientifically.
Your frontal cortex gets shut down, your decision making, and you live in your own reality that you've constructed. And as an entrepreneur, you're the master of constructing your own reality, because you're building a brand and a business, and everything you're creating, it's like you're the puppet master creating it all. And so you're absolutely right. And it wasn't until the pattern interrupt of literally, exposure, and finally for me to get that punch in the face, both literally as well as actually at times, where it was like this, I could finally connect with the signal. Yeah. Like I finally had the moment where the decisions I had blocked that from the gravity of those decisions, and finally those decisions and the signal could get through, and my world was fucked. Everything was crumbling around me, but I had a life-altering shift where I was just like the same commitment that I had when I found out I was going to be a dad. It was just like, look, I'm married. I'm going to do whatever it takes to save this marriage, and I'm going to just grind it. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, it took years, Sam, like years to get through that. To the point, though, now in hindsight, I couldn't even imagine that person. Like, I can't even think of who that person was, those thoughts, anything. Like, it's just completely foreign because I've rewired everything of who I am. But to your point, you're absolutely right. And I think in entrepreneurial men, we condition ourselves to block so many signals because we have to be successful. Mm-hmm. Starting your own business is not an easy task. You have to be crazy and addicted to an idea to succeed, because the odds are against you. And then we layer on, this was before I knew about meditation, before I knew about journaling, before I knew about just the biochemical release of exercise and stress. So I was like, well, I have all this stress that I need to now numb, I need to now deal with. I'm going to find this in other ways to feel better, drinking, relationships, all these other things, and do it in a way where it was obviously clearly destructive.
Taking your example, right, and connecting it to like just what I heard scientifically from this doctor, and and like finding finally the path that like people do shit simply because the signals are turned off. And then tragedy happens, some shit happens. Now you have a super sensitive fucking sensor that is constantly on, because you never ever want to feel or do what you did because you didn't even know what you were doing was what it's pure fucking hypnotism. Like do this, do that, and do this, and then you're like, oh fuck, I did that.
It's exactly that. And now, I mean, I had to, the primary reason of sobriety for me was to ensure that I was 100% always in tune with those signals.
Yes.
And who I really was at a core.
Yes.
Because any substance or external influences has the risk of changing us, even if it's temporarily, from that core origin self. And I wanted to never risk that ever again.
Yes.
But it is mind-blowing, and I sympathize for people in those situations. But then I also have a lack of sympathy when they fail to make the decision.
Of course.
Because all it was a decision of commitment to something greater than business, alcohol, and these other things that I was putting first.
And so, you know, the concept that Dr. Dubke was explaining yesterday was very simple, right? He said, like, dude, you know, he was thinking about our overall being is this, like, just like having the tools to build a house, right? We need to build the house first. And how the tools are like basic thing: air, water, food, movement, you know, sleep. And so that by itself needs to be in a healthy function, right? Which is a great conversation to have. It's not really complicated, and most of us fuck up in there anyway. Like, we don't drink enough water, we're not putting enough oxygen in our bodies, and like, I'm the first one in the line, right? But that makes total sense, and it's like, okay, this is a very simple way to think. But then he said, like, if you don't build the house on a solid foundation, then it's just like a shitty house. It's like a, you know, it's like building a house, a family house, and I don't know, it's just like, if it's on a shitty foundation, maybe a whorehouse. I don't know. You know what I mean? But so he started talking about the foundation, and interesting enough, the foundations were or adrenaline glands, right? That control, or he said out of 6,000 people that actually visited with him, 6 people had their shit that was actually okay, right? Everybody else was almost shut down. Then he talked about this relationship between the brain and the gut. And then he talked about inflammation, and then he talked about toxins that we all carry. And so he explained how this all comes in together as physically affecting us. But also then he went inside of the house and he said emotional and our energy and our past dramas, that affects everything, right? So as he's explaining all this, the concepts of signals are super clear to me. Like, the one thing that I got out of that is, okay, I must connect to my signals, right? So I got, whatever there's a problem, I got to go find the signal, polish the signal, and figure out what's going on with my receptors in anywhere, right? So if you have right now a marriage that for some reason you feel disconnected, you're not having sex, you're not, you know, intimate enough, like, dude, these are the fucking signals, right? These are signals. You gotta have to go and explore and say, what's going on? The signals are telling, like, realistically, if you're not having enough sex with your wife, it's a fucking signal. What do you want to tell you? It's a signal that some shit is going on wrong. Like, something is wrong. Either you're fucked up or she's, like, there is a problem somewhere. And that's why you guys are not coming together as often as you should.
And I found, for me specifically, a lack of a signal is a signal, because my wife grew up in a home that was completely opposite of mine, where in her upbringing, you don't talk about problems at all.
Sure.
You internalize it. You don't complain, you know, Japanese, Asian culture. Me, I grew up around tons of women, and you just, like, your, you know, skin feels weird and you talk about it for 2 hours.
Sure.
Everything's always talking. So in our marriage initially, I didn't think anything was wrong because Mika wasn't saying anything, and she wasn't saying anything because she didn't want to rock the boat, and we just had this gap of communication. And so when I started to get more stressed and I started to sedate and block these signals, rather than turning to her, which now is like the number one person I want to talk to about stuff, she has the best insight. I thought, well, I don't want to mess the homeostasis of our relationship here. I'm just going to figure out a way to handle this on my own. And she was oblivious to anything being wrong. And as we distance ourselves, especially she got pregnant and, thinking about all the things a woman has to go through for that, physiologically, mentally, chemically, it continued the gap for us where we just grew further and further apart. And afterwards, the very first conversation we had in marriage counseling was about marriage foundations. And our counselor said, you guys have no foundation as a couple at all. You live in your silos. You're always doing stuff sort of, with Russ's family or with Mika's family or Russ's friends or Mika's friends. You have no traditions. You have no foundation, period.
Wow.
That was literally the first conversation we had from it. And it's always retrospect. You think like, oh, I'm glad I had Maddox. And like, it's hard to say I'm glad I had the affair, but I am, because our foundation now, then Warrior, we haven't even got to, you layer on that on top of everything, is impenetrable. Whereas Mika and I both agree that had this not happened early on in our marriage, it would have happened at 20 years or 30 years. We would have just kept building on this rickety foundation. And, when the skyscraper topples, it's irreparable. You can't build the new skyscraper. If a little shack crumbles, that falls, well, you can recover from that and build something else.
Dude, that's so fucking powerful. That's a chronic fucking disease inside of today's marriages, that marriages don't have any foundation. Couples live with each other for years, 20, 30 years, in different silos. They coexist. They have kids. They go to their kids' wedding. They become grandfather. Yet their foundation was never there. And they live in different silos, just exactly like what you explained with patterns and behaviors. Holding in versus expressing, not wanting to, violate her space with entrepreneurial talk and bank account talks at the same time. Dude, like, this is like Dr. Depke was talking about, like every disease generates from inflammation. And he explained it and it made fucking sense, right? And the histories and the books, if you go back 3,000 years, of like medicine initially was like looked at, everybody talks about fucking inflammation. And so inside of that's the current fucking inflammation inside of the marriages. Your fucking marriage is inflamed because your foundation is not there. You're living in fucking silos.
Absolutely. And the children component doesn't help either.
Doesn't help.
They create a further silo to some.
And then the conversation becomes think about it. The conversation becomes either a list of logistics around the kids or responsibility. I mean, that becomes 90% of the conversation. The rest of the 10% is a minimum checklist of, okay, we have sex just to say that we're a fucking normal couple, and that's it. Like, sex becomes like eating, shitting, sleeping. It just becomes it's not what it's meant to be, which is bringing two people together. How could it be when you're fucking inflamed? Like, you can't even fucking reach. Like, your penis will not even reach the vagina because you're fucking emotionally inflamed. The inflammation, it doesn't allow that. It doesn't create that fucking connection. You see what I mean?
Exactly. I literally can envision it.
Yeah, with my ding. You can't, because there's fucking inflammation. And but this is, like, we're talking about this, we're having a little bit like fun around this, but this is truly the chronic fucking disease, or the fucking, like, inside of marriages is like not having a foundation. And it wasn't until what you shared right now that I'm like, fuck, I'm putting it again together, right? Lack of signals, no foundation. Basically, you run a whorehouse. You're not, it's not a house. You're like, you built a house, but what happens inside of the house is pretty fucked up.
Right. And I think the isolation that comes from living in these silos, that's then where the systemic problems of addiction, affair, isolation, depression, all of these things come from, because we're just not equipped to manage everything on our own. We need outlets, whether those are mental, physical, psychological, but we lack a foundation. We tiptoe around our partners. We don't want to burden them, quote unquote, with our stresses because we say, oh, well, this is ours. I created this business. I have these challenges. I'm not going to do it. But the reality is with a strong foundation, like the number one person with insight and experience around me is my significant other.
Fuck this. Isn't that fucking beautiful?
Like better than any psych, better than any doctor, better than any family member.
I'm fucking guilty of that too. Like I'll fucking drop the bomb right here, bro. Like I have to do a better job in explaining what is it that I fucking do to my wife, right? Because I kind of like what you said. Like I don't want to really bother her with the fucking problems of the work. But that's a fucking assumption and a justification. What if I would actually bother her? And inside of that, there'll be insights and guidance that could actually free me from some of this stress.
Right. And now because she knows the why, like this week, totally irrational for me to come here for a week and to check out of everything. She's 100% supportive of me supporting Warrior because I've had
involved.
Exactly. I've had so many conversations with her from, just generic, hey, think of these guys that we're going to be working with this week to seeing our impact in our marriage. But I've had to involve her. I've had to have conversations. And guess what? Sometimes, actually most of the time, it's not like some deep, meaningful aha. It's just, hey, here's what's going on. And she's just, okay. Cool.
And bro, if you don't... Like I'm guilty of fucking like doing a better job in involving my wife. Like I fucking admit it. I go live. I gotta do a better fucking job. I've been involving in most of my life, but recently I've kind of like didn't want to bring in the extra cloud of stress at home. It's like, okay, you got the baby, just deal with the baby. The baby's cute, the baby's fun. It's just like my story is this, right? And I'm gonna fucking break it today. My story is, I don't want to bring any amount of stress, or I don't even know what stress is, but let's call it stress. I don't want to bring in any amount of negativity to you so that you have less love to give to our daughter. Is that not fucked up? It's like you're pouring so much love into our daughter. It's fucking awesome. I don't want to fuck with that, right? But that's a story. And like you said, because our wives, the person that we live with, like they are our partners, bro. Partners and partners in life. We are building a life together. We're not just fucking living together. Living together is when you don't have a fucking foundation. You end up living with years. But you never built anything because the foundation was shitty. You couldn't build anything on top of it. But when you're building a life with your wife, I mean, it's in all aspects, spiritually, physically, like everything you're building together. Business, your business partner. Without my wife, I would not be sitting fucking here.
Right.
She has supported and she has been the backbone of every single fucking decisions that I made. The biggest decisions in my businesses, from the oil and gas days to software days to this. She has always been the cornerstone of all those decisions. Without her, impossible. In all the business deals. So here I'm sitting and I'm like, what the fuck? If that's the consigliere, fuck yeah, let's call it that. She's the consigliere. She's the fucking she should be a consigliere in all aspects of my life.
It's and in the beauty of it is it's often the simplest conversations because you don't need to explain you. They know you. I'll ask Mika for hey, what about this? What about this? And it's maybe one sentence.
Yeah.
And it's actually the most efficient conversations I have.
Shit. All right, cool. So let's talk about you coming into Warrior Week 22. You come across Warrior Week. First of all, what is it that hooked you? This is something that I have to look into. This is perhaps another signal. And then you experienced something in 22. You lived that for 3 years, and we're going to talk about 38. But why don't you just take us through that? Well,
the honest truth was my friend sent me a link to one of the funnel sites. And he said, hey, bro, go check out this guy.
Yeah.
I really want to build a personal brand. I like what this guy's doing. And I went to the site and I said, oh, man, they use Infusionsoft. I use Infusionsoft at Design Pickle.
Yes.
I'm just going to put in my email to see how the marketing goes and to see the auto sequences here.
Yeah.
Like 3 days later, I'm watching videos nonstop. But the ultimate catalyst for me wasn't acute crisis at that time.
Yes.
That had happened years prior. In fact, I was on a upward trajectory in my relationships, physically, with my wife, but I was hungry for more. And it was this nagging question, this nagging voice, like, is there something else? Like, what do you not know? And what I didn't realize at the time, which I realize now, is it was like the voice telling me, guiding me to Warrior to help level me up as a man and also create more certainty within myself. Because I at that time, I was still the guy. I went to the seminars, I read the books, I was always seeking answers everywhere else. And this ultimately, this is the judo of Warrior. It's like, I was like, oh, this program has the answers too. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to Warrior Week. And then I come out of that with basically the mirror turned on me, saying, guess where all the answers lie?
Yeah.
It's not in a program. It's in the guy in the mirror. But that decision was life-changing, to say the least, because it allowed me to let go of the past. It allowed me to accept what has happened throughout my whole life, all the transgressions and decisions. And as I'm sure other guys have said on the show, equip me with a rock-solid, simple framework of living that I have carried through and leveraged day in and day out. We've been talking a lot about marriage and relationships. The one thing that I knew I needed to close the door on was Mika and I not getting through what had happened, but just being accepting of what had happened.
Sure.
And that came about a year after Warrior Week 22, but it only came because I leveled up in my certainty as a man, being able to build more trust with her. The more certain I became, the more decisions I made, the faster I operated, the more I included her, the more trust we built. And that grew and grew and grew and grew. And now it's to the point where, she could listen to this podcast, no issue. She could come on, talk about it from her perspective. She's written blog posts. I've written books about it. But that would have never happened without the initial journey into the Warrior's Way and adopting that for my kind of operating mode of life.
So inside of Warrior Week 22, you come in and there's this whole game of association. And I specifically remember, bro, like your tuition for Warrior Week was a struggle for you. And
it was.
You had to fucking like make arrangements. And I typically at that time we didn't make any fucking arrangements. Like, listen, the seats are like there. And so for some reason we made the arrangements. You said you're going to give your word. And so I remember up to now, out of all the guys that made fucking arrangements, all the guys, you were the one that I remember that when you said that on this day I will pay, on this day the money would come. And you picked up 3 different dates for 3 payments. And on the first one or on the second one, you actually notified me 4 or 5 days before that this won't happen on this date, but you're committing to the next day, right? You could have easily let it go because it was the next day, right? Mm-hmm. You could have easily said, oh, okay, well, you didn't have to tell me. You didn't have to. Like, most people don't do that.
Right.
Like, think about it, bro. Like, you're in your life. How many people fucking borrowed money from you back in the days or whatever? And, like, you have to call them to say where the money's at. And sometimes you don't even want to make that phone call. You're like, fuck it, let them keep it. Because you don't want to even, like you feel bad because you're asking for your own money because you feel cheap. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, it's like,
you're inconveniencing
for
them.
fucking years, my cousin did this to me. Like, it would just fucking borrow money from me and never, ever acknowledge his commitment on the dates or whatever the fuck he promised. Never, ever, ever. Dude, like fucked up things. We would go to the ATM. He'd say, listen, bro, I need some money. So take this envelope, put like an empty envelope in and say you deposit like 500 and withdraw 500. This is Friday. I will give you the money on Monday. So by the time Monday comes, you can say you made a mistake. You forgot to put the money inside of the envelope. Here's the $500. I'm like, bro, I can't do that. He goes, dude, do it. I fucking need the money this weekend. I'm like, okay. Put an empty envelope, withdraw 500, Deposit 500, withdraw immediate 500 because the bank trusted me at that time, I guess. Fucking Monday, hey, empty envelope, call the guy, where's the money? Can't get the fucking money, right? So I have to run and borrow it from my dad. Dude, I was young. I didn't have fucking like $500. I didn't even have $500 in my account. I had to put a fucking empty envelope. But this has been done over and over where specifically with money, people borrow money and they don't come back on the exact commitment that they made on that date. You were one of the only guys that did that, and I remember I felt like really good. I'm like, fuck. Like I felt this pain of me getting fucked by my cousin all these years, and everybody else fucking borrowed money from me. I feel like all that went away when you meant that commitment. I'm saying this because it was the facts. It took place. But I'm relating it to everything else that you talked about here. I'm relating that to the commitment you made for your daughter. So when you're sitting here and you're sharing with me at 22, bro, this is what I felt, but I went to that commitment. I fucking believe you 100%. Mm-hmm. Most people say, well, oh, yeah, typical talk, right? I made the commitment. What does that mean, right? People don't. I believe you because I know the same patterns. When you commit to something, you commit.
Right.
When you committed, when that shit happened inside of your marriage and you committed to building a life with Mika, and not to get what the incident that took place, it is now part of the foundation of your relationship upon which you're building.
Right.
It will never go away, but it doesn't matter. It's fucking buried inside of the foundation, and it fucking supports what you're building because you wouldn't become aware of the signals. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this, it just closes the loop on your patterns. I wanted to mention that it closes the loop on your patterns. That when you commit to something, your word means something, right? So when you sit here and say, Sam, I will be there or I won't be there, I can 100% count on it.
Right.
And to me, that's fucking valuable because today, that's fucking rare. Today, that is a fucking rare.
And it's, I wish I could say I've been perfect about it, but I haven't. However, I know moving forward that I agree. Like, to me, that is the currency today of any great creation, whether that's a relationship or a business or a parenting relationship. And we are just so afraid sometimes of communicating that it's beyond me. Like your cousin, he probably dodged you, didn't answer his phone, things like that.
All that stuff.
Rather than saying, hey, I don't have the money.
Yes.
And I remember when we made the commitment to Warrior Week and Kingdom, which remember was like a year-long commitment and a larger price tag than it is now, like that was more money than my business made in a few months. Yeah. But I was committed to that because I knew, hey, I'm already invested in this. Who do I need to become to not only make this and some, and play the game at the highest level to where it's like an investment for me. Actually, I was just having this conversation with Matt from Warrior Week 44 about the investment. And I'm like, dude, I've been investing in programs with Warrior because for me, it's accountability and it's a promise to myself that I must do more than that. I must become more than that. And that is the mindset that I've taken into business, into my family, into everything. It's actually kind of a running joke with Mika now because I have a whiteboard in my garage and she is nervous when I write stuff up there because it happens. It's like, oh, she literally said, Russ, whenever you say you're going to do something, you do it.
Yes.
And I don't know, like that's just the brand I have and the mindset that I have.
I mean, I look at it and commitment is a foundation that you have as a person. Today, you can sit there and say commitment is a foundation. You build the house of commitment on solid foundations. And so you continue to build and build and build and build. You did that in 22. You came in for 3 years. You've continuously committed to anything that would help you grow, both in your relationship, business, physically, and as well as spiritually. And so things were good. all the way to a point where it said, listen, bro, here's a new worry week. Like, there's a new bloodline. There's a new conversation. And you're like, what? I have to go through all that shit again? And so, like, you haven't gone through this. What will you do? You had a choice. Like, it wasn't like you didn't have a choice. And you decided to come 38 to Warrior Week 38, the new bloodline inside of Warrior Week, and the new experiences that was designed purely around, like, different purpose this time. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about specifically what you had to face in that first night that you hadn't faced for a while inside of your pit, and what did you got from that whole experience that shifted you once more?
Well, it was like a 2-day insight that happened. First on the first night, and then on the second day on the beach. And it was specifically with Mika because I had come to grips with my addiction, and I had come to grips with sobriety in 2013, and here we are in 2017. I'm like working on a book. I'm Mr. Sober Guy. But what I realized was that there was someone else in my life that I was fueling their addiction, and that was Mika. And I was sedating her. I was actively sedating her in order to gain access to things I wanted out of the relationship, like sex and intimacy. The easiest example is if it was date night, it was like get a bottle of champagne, go out to date night, come home, she would drink some champagne, and I'd get laid. It was like an easy thing, but she was suffering and in silence around the stresses of being now a mom. We had another daughter, so we had 3 kids. She's a stepmom. She has 2 daughters of her own. Running a house, we're building a house, doing all these things, and she was now going through the same things, and I was ignoring it, and I was not acknowledging it, and we would have problems together as a couple where she would be drinking middle of the day and be drunk, and I'm like, what the fuck, like you are selfish, you're being a selfish bitch. And then at Warrior Week, guess what I realized? Who was buying her the alcohol? Who is supporting her? Who is allowing that behavior? And I just broke down, and I realized, like, I felt like a terrible person. I mean, for me, it was like I'm being the drug dealer for it. And I was doing it out of selfish reasons. Here I was wanting to have sex and intimacy, believing, okay, well, I need to get her drunk. But the consequences of those decisions were wreaking havoc in her life personally. And so I committed to not acknowledging that and confronting that. And I mean, it was after Warrior Week, and I told her, and I said, look, this is where it's at. I didn't give her an ultimatum. I said, look, here's just what I acknowledge and I realize. Fast forward today, Mika's now been sober for 7 months.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah. I mean, actually less than that. No, it's been like about 5 months, but she's quit drinking completely on her own. Like, her life is on a different trajectory. And that experience of Warrior Week 38, I mean, I had a conversation with you about it. I'm sure every guy who has to come back does at some point. I was so pissed about the decision to come back, but the reality is I knew that there was still another gift for me to find inside the pit.
And what a huge gift that was.
Right.
And
guess what? I'm still getting laid now sober, which is awesome. I just had to relearn a different game.
Which brings me to this whole conversation, right? There's a reason, there's a purpose why you're fucking here. You're a man of commitment, and you say what you're going to do. So you're going to say something right now that you're going to do. And to me, this just came to me as like, dude, you've discovered a piece of a puzzle that men would you can help other men. And that is when you become the guy that is the drug dealer, right? When you become the guy that acts like you discovered a path, you discovered the pattern and the behaviors and routine, and you discovered it, you cracked the fucking rock, which is I became sober, so that should be good. But now in my being sober, I'm not in integrity. I'm actually making I'm living through somebody else.
Right.
So I think this is a blueprint that needs to be printed, and this is a story that needs to be told, because this will open the path and will give the guidance to guys they think that they've already arrived just because they stopped drinking.
Right.
So you have Sober Entrepreneur as your book that came out, and it's continued to come out. It's an amazing book. You give me a copy initially, and it's an awesome fucking book. I think there needs to be a follow-up to that, bro. Just telling what you just told here. It doesn't have to be a long-ass book, but this blueprint needs to be put out there.
I'm committed to that. I will definitely, I will for sure tell that story because...
And it could be a joint book that you're writing with Mika, because right now, like, half of it is yours, but it's also like on the receiver side,
right,
the patterns and the behaviors. And now this become like literally a fucking blueprint for couples that are facing this kind of issues. Again, this is not to point at alcohol or anything else. This is really to point at habits and patterns that happens that fucks with the foundation.
That's it.
Of the marriage that is needs to be there, because without that foundation, like the building doesn't happen. You end up just living.
Or it goes 1.5 stories, 2 stories,
Stops.
and it stops. And you're there and rickety.
And you live with the story that you built a half a story.
Right.
But
it's on the docket. Sober Wife, the book.
Sober Wife. Shit, see? There was a fucking reason why you had to come here, bro.
All right.
Okay, so being sober, like I quit drinking in 2008. I quit drinking because I noticed that I'm forgetting to close the door of my car and come out of it. I didn't know what what I ate yesterday. Like, my short memory was being affected. And I think somehow I read on the internet, alcohol can cause that. And I kind of noticed that it was doing that to me. And it freaked me out. I ignored it. And then I went to a trip in Africa for 3 months in Uganda. I had to work over there. And dude, like, I don't want to be fucking drunk there, right? I was by my own. I was with some other dude. They just like, I just had to be alert in terms of at least that was my fucking story.
Right.
I mean, I would see guys with fucking machine guns in front of the convenience stores in the bank, or taxi drivers with fucking machine guns. This is no fucking joke here. All right, I'm not fucking drinking here. Last thing I want is a big black dude coming in my fucking room in the middle of the night. Because I left the door open. So 3 months went by. I come back, and this pattern of having fucking drinking was already out. Like, I remember specifically, bro, I went to a restaurant, I ordered food. Lady came in, what do you want to drink? I was going to say beer, but I'm like, why? So no, it's just water, right? Or whatever, Diet Coke or whatever that was. But like, you get to this point when you actually are obligated because of social environment and places to just drink and have alcohol presence in your body 24 hours. And then spark it by drinking more.
Right.
3 months turned into a year. Year turned into 10 years now.
Yeah.
And it is one thing that I kept. Like, alcohol, there was no tragedy on alcohol. I didn't beat my wife. I didn't I didn't do anything stupid. Like, there was no reason other than this just happened. And it's one habit that I kept throughout this year. And it has, like, here's what I'm proud of. Because my son never saw me drunk. Mm-hmm. And I was never drunk. I never seen my son with drunk eyes. That fuels me.
Right.
And that puts me in a position of power to stand behind this conversation on alcohol, just like you're doing, just like the fucking work that you've done. 5 years now, 2013, 2018, you had to go through fucking hell. But it puts you in a position of power to stand behind the problems. That's why you wrote the book. Right. That's why you're writing the book now again with Mika, Sober Wife.
Well, the tagline in my book, this is just a quick story. It's called Change Your Family Tree.
Shit, yeah.
And the moment I'd committed to sobriety, it was post-affair. I was still dabbling in drinking. I hadn't come to acceptance of a sober life. But I was reading this biography that my grandmother had written, and she had since passed. So I had it for about 4 or 5 years. She wrote it and then died about four years later. It was in 2013. I was reading this, and this was her family story. So this was like going back to her grandparents who immigrated from Germany to come here, and talking about that in Arizona, like before Arizona was a state. It's this cool book. And I'm flipping through this book, and every time, not 100% of the time, but for the most part, all of the men depicted in that book had these like tragic anecdotes about them. so-and-so lost all his money gambling. This person was an alcoholic. This person had, had misery with affairs and womenizing. And I was literally reading this book, probably the only written account of these men in existence, because no one else was writing a biography. They're not notable people. They're just everyday guys. This was their legacy that my grandma had written about them. And I thought to myself, what if I died right now? What would my legacy be? What would my story be? And I was crushed. I was like, I am not happy with this at all. And I made the commitment then to at least, I'm not going to be perfect, obviously, but I'm going to eliminate alcohol from my life, because when my daughters write my book or legacy, they won't know drunk eyes or hungover dad or tired dad or out late or why is dad acting weird or all of that.
It's true.
And I decided to change my family tree. Now, 1 week after the affair, kind of reverse chronologically, this was before I read this book, we decided to go back to church. The very first sermon ever, and it was just like a church we'd driven by 100 times, but in our neighborhood, we're just like, fuck, we don't know what to do. Let's just go back. Let's try church. It's not going to hurt. The very first sermon ever was change your family tree. And it was literally how every one of you is the new branch in your family tree, and everyone from you will only know your version of that.
That's beautiful.
So those two things connected for me and allowed me to realize, like, I'm in charge of that now, and I'm going to control that and design that.
That's a beautiful story. Dude, loved having you on the show.
Thank you.
You not only dropped like some guidance, but really the blueprint of a lot of things was just displayed here, right? Through you living it, your life. Perhaps, I don't know, my fucking cousin, Dr. Debke, like all kind of characters that came in today inside of conversation. But like if you're watching and listening to this, and if you've got something from this that you can tactically actually take and apply in your life, you have the obligation to forward this to another man that could listen to this and get insights and perhaps maybe help him change his family tree. And I encourage you to continuously watch episodes of the Warrior Week podcast on warriorweeknow.com. We have pictures, movies. We have the podcast, obviously, and transcripts for you available there. You can also download this on iTunes and Google Play by typing in Warrior Week and downloading the Warrior Week podcast. I thank each and single of you for being on the call. Thank you, Russ Perry, for being here, man.
Thank you, Sam.
And look forward to the book.
The next book.
Yeah, the
Sober Wife.
Sober Wife.
Sober Life.
Sober Life. Wife or life? Life.
Maybe I'm gonna have 3 books.
Sober la vida. The Spanish version. But like the joint book.
The joint book will happen.
Not just you and Mika.
The joint book
writing
will
that
happen.
like it's just the blueprint, and that is valuable.
Thank you.
Thank you.